My name is Dinglai Win, and I'm delighted to be facilitating this very important event. Now, I come from the Mekong region myself, so the issues of land rights and secure tenure are topics that are very close to my heart. And before we begin, let me highlight a few housekeeping rules. They're very important, so please listen carefully. First, please mute your mics unless you are a speaker. And secondly, all the event details, including the Zoom links to all the different sessions, are on the Huova app. So please keep the app handy, either on your mobile phone or on your desktop. All the main sessions are in English, but simultaneous translation will be provided in 4 languages: Khmer, Lao, Myanmar, and Vietnamese. So if you need to follow the proceedings in a language other than English, please make sure that you have selected the correct audio channel on your Zoom. To do that, you need to go to the bottom of your Zoom window where you can find icons for audio, video, and the chat box. Now look out for an icon of a little globe. Click on it and then select the language that you want. Make sure though to turn off the original presenter language so you do not hear both. Now we have more than 900 participants registered today, and I see that the number of participants that are coming online now is increasing, over 200 already. Now this is fantastic. It also makes Q&A sessions during the plenary just a little bit more challenging. So if you have a question during the plenary, please use the chat box. The moderator's organization when you're asking questions. We want to hear from as many of you as possible, so please keep your input short and concise. Of course, for interacting with other participants and to present yourself, please use the Huova app. Now, a final housekeeping note. We encourage lively discussions, but please be respectful of others' opinions and cultures. Now, we're holding this forum virtually because the global pandemic has unfortunately not yet ended. And if there is one thing that the COVID-19 outbreak has taught us, it is the crucial need to sustainably manage our natural resources. During this forum online has allowed us not only to lower our carbon emissions and conserve resources, but also enable a wider global audience to participate. Now, I'll take you through the agenda and the objectives in detail in a little while. But first, let's hear from our opening speakers who will be setting the scene on how to strengthen the land rights of local communities, particularly women in forest areas. Our first speaker is Mr. Jean-François Quinault, Regional Director for the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. Now, the SDC has been a key development partner in this space for many years and continues to support many projects and organizations who are attending the forum today. Jean-François, the floor is yours.
So, hello everybody and distinguished guests and participants, representatives of Cambodia, Laos, PDR and Vietnam, Laos, PDR and Vietnam, representatives of ASEAN and the ASEAN Secretariat, development agencies and partners, distinguished representatives of the society, of the academia, and of the sector, ladies and gentlemen in the whole region. It is a great pleasure for me by the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation and to welcome you at the 3rd Mekong Regional Land. So we are at a critical moment, not only for the interpretation, but also for in the Mekong region. I mean, there are opportunities and challenges that the Mekong region is facing. Economic growth over recent decades out of poverty. More than ever, smallholder farmers have been brought into the mainstream of global markets and finding new opportunities. But at the same time, many are being left behind. The gap and the poor have substantially, and landless farmers are increasing. we know that the women in female-headed households are often particularly vulnerable in this situation. We know also that ecological change is happening at a rapid scale, and the most vulnerable to changes are often the least equipped to deal with them. As we begin to resolve the far-reaching effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, as borders begin to reopen and business resume, we anticipate a resurgence of both opportunities, but also of challenges. It is a time for making good of the political commitments that have been made to ensure and protect the rights of the most vulnerable. Decisive informed action is needed, not only by the public sector, but also the private sector and the civil society. Switzerland, through SDC, has been an active development partner in the Mekong region since the 1990s. And in 2006, Switzerland has further expanded its presence in the region with the establishment of the Swiss Regional Cooperation Office in Vientiane capital and the Cambodian office in 2012. Since then, it has been active in 3 sectors: in governance and citizen participation, in agricultural and food security, and finally in skills development and employment through programs implemented in the Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam countries. In line with the worldwide Swiss international cooperation strategy covering the years 2021 to 2024, approved by the Swiss Parliament, SDC will maintain its presence in the Mekong region and continue its support to governance and citizens' participation, but broaden the 2 other sectors with a focus on climate change mitigation and adaptation and on inclusive economic development. This reflects the challenges the Mekong region as a whole is facing and the need to anticipate the consequences of climate change and to boost an economy able to absorb the young and vulnerable generations. Switzerland is committed to supporting land and forest tenure in the Mekong region, ensuring that smallholders' rights to land and forest resources are recognized in national legal framework, in policies, and are protected in practice. Ensuring smallholder tenure security not only protects the poor, but also strengthens the very basis of local and national economies. As such, land and forest rights are first-order priorities and necessary preconditions for the sustainable development of the Mekong region. With the rapid rise of land-based investments in the Mekong, smallholder farmers have faced mounting challenges to defend their land claims. Progressive companies have, in many cases, become vocal proponents of responsible agricultural investments and advocates for policies that level the playing field for quality investment. But unfortunately, not all companies are progressive. Allow me to highlight some of the work that we have supported in fulfillment of these commitments. Switzerland has been instrumental in the work of the ASEAN Working Group on Social Forestry through the ASEAN-Swiss Partnership on Social Forestry and Climate Change program. This 10-year partnership helped support ASEAN and its member states to develop, reform, and implement policies on social forestry. And by 2020, ASEAN countries had doubled the area under this form of community forestry, going from 6.7 to almost 14 million hectares. The Center for People and Forest, RECOF-TC, has played a key role in empowering rural people, especially women and vulnerable groups, to live equitably in thriving, climate-resilient forest landscapes. In Laos, SDC has had the privilege of working together with the government of the Lao PDR to address rampant and often weakly regulated land investments. Supported by the Center for Development and Environment of the University of Bern, the Lao government undertook an unprecedented effort to register, map, and assess land investments across the whole country. These efforts culminated in the Prime Minister's order to investigate and cancel more than 400 non-performing investments. To achieve its mission to support the tenure security of smallholder farmers, SDC, together with partners from the governments in Germany and Luxembourg, has also financed and supported the Mekong Region Land Governance project, MRLG, implemented by Land Equity International and GRET, Professionals for Fair Development, also supported by the GIZ since 2014. Founded on the conviction that we are better together when we work together in mutual respect and effective collaboration, MRLG works to facilitate and enable strategic alliances across the Mekong, involving civil society, government agencies, the private sector, and academia to effect transformative change towards a truly sustainable, inclusive future. And to date, these alliances include more than 80 institutional members. Since 2014, MRLG and its alliance members have made substantial gains. For example, in Cambodia, this includes the development of new approaches for protected area zonation that mainstream global standards for free, prior, and informed consent. In the Lao PDR, this included effective cooperation throughout the revision of the land and forestry laws adopted in 2020, piloting of tenure security interventions in forest areas, and the ongoing development of related sub-legislation, as well as the development and implementation of new ministerial instructions on land investments to address policies in contract farming. In Vietnam, this includes the successful advocacy by alliance partners for improved recognition of ethnic minority rights in the 2017 law on forestry, ongoing piloting to implement new provisions for the allocation of forest lands to communities, and collaboration with the government of Vietnam to assess the effectiveness of the 2013 land law, contributing to its revision going forward. In Myanmar, great work has been done to assess the status and implications of banana plantation development for local communities and their tenure security. However, due to the current political situation, policy dialogue is not possible with the de facto authorities, and work with the civil society organizations is challenging for us and often risky for them. And our hearts are with the people of Myanmar and with all those who struggle for peace and democratic freedoms. Across the CLMV countries and at the regional level, MRLG is rolling out novel initiatives to address the needs of women in the land sector, working together with champions of change to bring about transformative actions to ensure that the tenure rights of women and men are equally protected. Switzerland and the other donors to MRLG have been very pleased with the effective cooperation of the government partners across the Mekong region, partners that have committed themselves to public accountability and the rule of law in the administration of land and forest resources. We know that though the challenge of fulfilling these commitments is daunting, so is the reward a more sustainable, equitable, inclusive future for the people of the Mekong region. We now look forward to the next 2 days with eager anticipation and are pleased to welcome our distinguished guests to this forum. Thank you. Khop Chai Lalai.
Thank you very much, Jean-Francois, for those comments. I really appreciate it, and particularly for understanding the technical difficulties as well. And of course, for your comments on the emphasis on inclusive economic development. And on a personal level, I really appreciate your comments on Myanmar as well, because that's where I come from. And thank you also to the SDC for its long-standing commitment to land rights. And we would also like to take this opportunity to thank the governments of Germany and Luxembourg that Jean-Francois has mentioned just now for their support of the Mekong Region Land Governance project. Now, apologies again with the technical issues. We are at this point in time unable to provide translation for the time being. We're trying to solve this problem, and we hope to get this resolved after setting the scene. And can I again request all the attendees to mute your mic unless you are a speaker. For now, I'd like to invite Dr. Micah Ingalls, team leader of the MRLG and long-term resident of the Mekong region, to give his remarks.
Guests and participants from government, civil society, academia, and the development community. On behalf of the Mekong Region Land Governance Project, I want to express my sincere appreciation to you for joining us at the Mekong Regional Land Forum over the next 2 days. I join my colleague, Mr. Jean-Francois, in recognizing policies and the practices of the public sector have improved in important ways, strengthened by emerging global frameworks that promote good governance. Also makes calls for the private sector itself to embrace not only its role in economic growth, but also in the social and environmental sustainability of the region. Civil society, in many cases, has strengthened its voice in the public sector, gained access to new tools and resources for creating positive change. Changes have been made, and there really are reasons for hope. To be done. 70 million smallholder farmers depend on the Mekong's forests that have been managed by local communities for generations. Investments has not only created new opportunities for economic progress, but also important social and environmental impacts, including the displacement of smallholder farmers and a large-scale replacement of natural ecosystems with monoculture plantations. While economies have continued to expand in manufacturers and service sectors, agriculture remains the mainstay of the rural economy. It's a large share of the population. Often these smallholders are the true engines of economic growth, representing by far the largest private sector investors. This must be radically transformed to reflect this. Several years, as concession-based models of land investment have failed to live up to their promises, many countries have increasingly turned toward novel outcomes that are only now coming to light. Have adapted to new opportunities as they integrate into global market chains. The Mekong region have adapted to these new opportunities as they integrate into the global market chains by changing their crops, their technologies, and their farming systems. They've also expanded along the agricultural frontier in search of land, often because they've been displaced by corporate land investments. This has largely come at the expense of forest lands and communal lands. In most cases, this has progressed absent of clear legal protections, titles, or other formal documentation. While the rules of resource access, use, and ownership have historically been a matter of local custom, the rapid integration of the global system, the formalization and expansion of the public land administration, and the unprecedented influx of commercial investments in recent years have dramatically challenged these customary systems. These challenges demand immediate and effective reform and more robust and equitable land administration. Among others, addressing these challenges requires two interrelated domains of action: the effective recognition of customary tenure claims through policy and their protection in practice, and the reorientation of agribusiness companies toward global standards of responsible investment. While these challenges are immediate and quite local, they also have far-reaching ramifications. It's important to remember that the Mekong region plays an outsized role in the world. Home to some of the most rapidly growing economies, the Mekong is also a biodiversity hotspot of global significance. It's a critical geography in the planetary carbon system and a leading global producer of large-scale agricultural commodities. Agricultural land area in the Mekong has grown by 20% over the past 25 years, but in some places it's even greater. In Vietnam, for example, agricultural land has expanded by more than 65% during that period. This expansion has mostly come at the expense of forests and natural ecosystems, and in the main has been driven by regional and global commodity markets. Fully 80% of agricultural land is today under just 6 crops, 5 of which, cassava, maize, sugarcane, rubber, and oil palm, are all integral to Mekong's export economy. In light of these changes, and as climate weirding and the turbulent global economy have forefronted these issues, it is reasonable to ask whether indeed the Mekong is at a tipping point. If it is, we're at a critical moment in history, with implications not only for this region, but also for the world. We simply do not have the luxury of time to be idle. Future generations will and should hold us accountable. There's no doubt that the issues before us are complex and challenging, and the stakes have never been higher. More than ever, constructive debate and dialogue is needed to address our shared concerns. These discussions should not be held behind closed doors, in silos, or in the echo chambers of positional politics that have divided us. Equally, we can't be naive. There are indeed gaps between us. We often see the world in different ways, embrace different visions of the future, and have different goals. But these gaps are not so wide as to prohibit bridges. We can and must build these bridges toward effective cooperation. Without these, we can entertain little hope for a more sustainable and inclusive future. This is at the heart of the Mekong Region Land Governance project. MRLG is rooted in the conviction that we can tackle these challenges better if we do it together. With the goal of improving tenure security for smallholder farmers, MRLG thus works through alliances, supporting our members to forge common vision and collective action between civil society, the private sector, and government agencies. Today, our alliance totals 84 member institutions, working around two thematic areas: the recognition of customary tenure and responsible agricultural investments, to develop and test better policies and more innovative ways of implementing these in practice. The Mekong Regional Land Forum, today and tomorrow, has been established precisely to advance this mission, by bridging the gaps between us, bringing diverse stakeholders together onto a common platform for meaningful and transformative dialogue. Over the next 2 days, we'll be faced with diverse perspectives, aspirations, and experiences from across the Mekong region. These may variously challenge, annoy, or inspire us. They also prompt us to further dialogue and, we hope, to further action. So I want to thank everyone once more for your participation and for your patience. I look forward to having great exchanges with you all as we work together toward a brighter and more inclusive future for the Mekong region. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Micah, for your thought-provoking remarks, particularly around the tipping points in the Mekong and the crucial need for openness and dialogue in policy making. Again, I'd like to just apologize for the technical issues, and I am not switching on my video by choice. There is also a technical issue on my end. Hopefully I'll resolve this. But in the meantime, I'd like to introduce our third speaker, Dr. Louise Jensen, who is a land tenure officer at the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, also known as the FAO.
Distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. I have the great honor and pleasure to welcome you today on behalf of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. I would have preferred to do that in person, but another wave of COVID is hitting the region and we are limited to attending the forum from home. Despite this limitation, to which we adhere as our health and that of others is of prime importance, this forum, organized by the Mekong Region Land Governance Project and the Land Portal, with FAO as co-organizer, is a platform for dialogue and information sharing on key land and forest governance challenges, experiences and lessons that are affecting vulnerable groups, including smallholder farmers, ethnic groups and women, and to share solutions for the way forward. Let's first have a look at Southeast Asia, being one of the world's hotspots for land-based investments in the form of industrial agriculture, including cross-border and national special economic zones, and tree plantation development. The extent and intensity of these land-based investments represents a new trend. Consequently, the agrarian structure has been considerably transformed. In the 2008 investment spike, Asia received $370 billion compared to approximately 70 billion for Africa and 200 billion for Latin America. Thus, Asia received 5 times the investments in Africa. However, Asia does not figure strongly in the scientific literature or in the available data on land-based investments as Africa does. It's therefore time to put a spotlight on Asia, and in particular on the Mekong region. The more so because governments and civil society organizations will be facing a resurgence of investments in land-based development once the COVID-19 restrictions slowly begin to be lifted. This expansion represents both an opportunity for community to benefit through responsible investment while also presenting risks that rural people without secure tenure rights, especially those with customary tenure systems, may be displaced by inappropriate land management decisions. If we zoom into the Mekong region, we can observe that agriculture, including forestry and fisheries, that all lie at the heart of FAO, employs over 43% of the population and contributes to around 16% to the regional gross domestic product, making it an important sector for investment. Agriculture investment can be key to support economic growth, enhance food security and nutrition, and reduce poverty, thereby contributing to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the Agenda 2030. Yet, this investment must be responsible to generate sustainable benefits. With the world population requiring food security and nutrition, and now also with migrant workers returning to the rural areas as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, competition for land and natural resources is increasing. Thus, the question who has access to, control over, or use of these resources becomes pivotal. Well, this is defined and regulated by societies. Decisions over the systems of tenure have important implications for people's livelihoods. Tenure systems, including customary tenure systems, are often treated as national policy issues, but they are also issues of global and regional concern. Where tenure rights are weak and their enforcement is weak, inequalities abound. According to Prindex, tenure insecurity in Cambodia, Laos, People's Democratic Republic, Myanmar, and Vietnam is 35, 25, 17, and 10% respectively, with 10% being the lowest possible score in Prindex. Improving the recognition and protection of customary tenure rights is important to raise tenure security. Secure tenure rights comprise often the duty to respect the long-term protection and sustainable use of resources. Such rights can serve as an incentive for better management of these resources, which, in turn, can offer positive climate mitigation outcomes. Welcoming and facilitating the meaningful and inclusive participation of users in forest landscapes, and to fully involve them in a participatory process of tenure governance, including their incorporation in, firstly, the formulation and implementation of policies and laws, and secondly, their incorporation in decisions on balanced and sustainable territorial development and spatial planning to achieve inclusive rural transformation. But it's not enough to be only involved in such decision-making processes, because people with customary tenure systems should be able to effectively determine the outcome of decision-making that affects them. This requires to be able to negotiate fair and enforceable outcomes. And this is called free, prior, and informed consent, or FPIC. Giving a voice to those affected by decision-making processes and their effective involvement in such processes will facilitate not only the acceptance of decisions being made, but also the implementation of such decisions. Dear distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, the work of FAO and partners in the Mekong region, with continuous support from the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, shows how closely recognition and protection of customary tenure systems is interlinked with responsible agricultural investment. That is why these two subjects are the recurring themes of the first, second, and now third Mekong Region Land Forum. If investment in agriculture is to contribute to food security and nutrition, and to inclusive rural transformation, we should ask what form such investment may take, whether large-scale plantations, concessions, or by supporting the ability of smallholder farming families and communities in forest landscapes to access, control, and use the land and natural resources in order to produce more and better. To be able to make informed and timely choices, governments, civil society, and private sector need to be presented with a full scale of options on forest and land governance for the benefit of all, with an emphasis on vulnerable and marginalized people. This emphasis on vulnerable and marginalized stakeholders, such as smallholder farmers, ethnic groups, and women, is justified by the fact that they often lack the ability to protect their tenure rights, and therefore they deserve particular focus so as not to be left behind. Dear distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to see so many of our partners gathered here for this third forum. This time it is particular because we can only see one another on our computer or mobile phone screen. We hope that notwithstanding this digital format, this two-day online forum will inspire and guide all of you to advance the recognition and protection of customary tenure systems and make responsible agriculture investment practices happen in the Mekong region. Reach out to each other and let this forum not only be an occasion in which we look at what we have done, but a commitment to travel the land and forest tenure governance road together. I wish you all a fruitful and inspiring forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louisa, for your remarks. I was just particularly struck by the figures that Louisa mentioned around land investment in Asia. And I think that just underlines this crucial need for responsible investment. Now, before we jump into the sessions and the presentations of the first discussions, let me briefly describe what's in store over the next 2 days and what we hope to achieve by the end of this event. Now, today, the first day of the forum, we will be focusing on advancing customary and collective forest tenure rights. Tomorrow, we will be looking at how to manage and respond to patterns and practices of investment in the Mekong forest landscapes. We have 2 plenary sessions on each day, and each of these plenary sessions are broken into 4 very distinct parts. Now, the first part is that each session will begin with an expert review of key concepts, followed by case studies that will show how a particular concept is being put into practice. Now, the second part is the panel discussion with experts and representatives from the government, development agencies, and civil society. During this time, participants can also ask questions. The third part is the breakout sessions, which will be in smaller groups. And it's really the time for deep dives and further debates where you can really interact with other attendees around a specific experience, topic, or question. And then for the fourth and final part, we will meet up again in a larger group where there will be a summary of the takeaways from the whole session. Of course, you are welcome to join any breakout session that you want, but do bear in mind that some of the sessions are conducted in English and others in local languages, but there is English language translation available for all sessions. Please go to the event website on the Rover app and check the details in the agenda and select which sessions that you want to join. Now, there are 2 broad-based objectives behind this year's forum. We wanted to, number 1, bring together practitioners, academics, and policymakers in a multi-stakeholder platform where we can have cross-country dialogue around policy and legal reforms. And 2, we wanted to share and discuss the latest evidence-based knowledge, as well as what we've been doing and what we have learned. So please take this opportunity to learn and interact as much as you can over the coming 2 days. And of course, do make full use of the Hover app as well to present yourself and share information about your project. Now, one last point before we start our first session. In case you haven't noticed, we have a graphic artist, Miss Tika Hun, who is capturing our discussion through her art. Now, she'll be doing this live throughout the forum's main sessions, and we will be posting time-lapse videos of her work in the morning and before the takeaway for each main session. The final versions will be shared after the forum. Now, without much further ado, let's begin the first session, which is on the experience of forest tenure recognition in the Mekong, with examples from the Lao PDR and Vietnam. We have Natalie Campbell, Regional Advisor from MRLG, who will be giving us an introduction on the key initiatives when it comes to forest allocation and customary tenure documentation in the region. Natalie?